Good evening. It's 7:01, and I call this meeting of the Silver Falls School District Board of Directors to order. All members are here except for Tom, and Tom had called in and said that the heat is really affecting his farm, so he's not with us tonight. So let's go ahead and do the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Owen, would you do me a favor and read the board?
I sure will.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to have Tom do it tonight, but he's not here. Thank
Glad
you.
to do it. Just everything in yellow.
Yep.
So this is from the Silver Falls School Board Superintendent Operating Agreement for 2022-2023. Collaborative governance. Members of the board and superintendent will work together in good faith as a team to the best interest of students, modeling a willingness to learn together. Board members will recognize and respect the superintendent's responsibility to manage the school and district, to direct employees in district and school matters. Board members will give careful consideration, listening to all perspectives, to all issues brought to the board by individuals and district leadership. The board may only make decisions at properly called meetings. Board members recognize that individual members have no authority to take individual action on policy or district and school administrative matters unless so authorized by board vote. Communication agreements. Board members must follow the chain of responsibility and communicate directly with the superintendent when a question arises or a concern or complaint is voiced by a staff member, student, parent, or community member. Board members will endeavor to communicate directly with the superintendent or board chair prior to meetings of the board to address questions and or concerns about agenda items. Board members and the superintendent recognize that good answers often require preparation in advance of board meetings. When a board member and or the superintendent has an individual concern, he or she must communicate one-on-one with any member of the board superintendent team as appropriate. In the interest of public transparency and full, robust debate, board members will endeavor to actively engage in and contribute to board discussions and to share their perspectives on topics before the board. Full participation from members in advance of a vote supports the board in making informed, well-considered decisions on important district matters.
Thank you, Owen. All right, moving on to the agenda review. I will take a motion.
I move to approve the agenda as published.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as published. Let's take the vote.
Phil,
Aye.
Aaron,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
all in favor.
All right, the consent agenda is next. As usual, any board member can remove an item and it doesn't require a motion. But I will take a motion if we want to approve the consent agenda.
Move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda.
Phil,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
Josh,
Yep.
Jennifer,
Yes.
all in favor.
All right, now we're in the public comment section. If you would like to speak during the public comment and are attending virtually, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. If you're attending in person, please approach the public comment table located in front of the board. I don't think there's anybody here. Is there anybody online?
Nobody online.
I'm not going to read the statement then. All right, administrator and staff reports. So Scott, you're going to be up first, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. So I want to walk you through just a couple of updates. And the first of which will be the OSEA SFSD collective bargaining agreement. And I just want to start out by saying hats off to OSEA. They're an absolute pleasure to work with. I'll get into a few of the specifics in a minute, but I really want to give them credit for us being able to end negotiations in in a very collegial manner. We had a few bumps on the road, but that's to be expected, very spirited conversations. But hats off to Vance Taylor, president of OSEA, and his team. The other thing I wanted to mention is that a collective bargaining agreement is our agreement. It is not one side's agreement, it is ours. And those agreements will walk you through in specifics the actual contractual language, but I always like to start with that piece. Too many times we think the collective bargaining agreement is their agreement, and it's not, it's ours. And both groups need to work together to make sure that that collective bargaining agreement is implemented and implemented well. So some of the things you're going to see tonight as we walk you through this, we have a 3-year agreement. So we won't go into negotiations again until 2026, which I don't know about you, Dan, but it seems like ever since 2019, you've been bargaining every year. And Dan is our spokesperson, as our superintendent, assistant superintendent for HR. It was a 4-month process. We started in April, and OSEA was really good about making sure we got dates on the calendar through the summer, and we finished on the last day of July. A 4-month negotiation process in this new era, post-COVID era of union negotiating is really, really incredible. And I think a lot of that has to do with our team, the countless hours of work that went on behind the scenes to do the work, to come up with the different scenarios that we had at the ready to answer any offer that was put across the table to us from OSEA. And that all has to do with Kim Dowd's leadership. Kim led the efforts on the financial side. Steve was gracious enough to take a step back and allow Kim, our controller, to lead us through that, through the financials, and as well as all of our other team members. But I can't say enough about Kim and the trust that she built with the other side. We also heard many comments from the other side about the trust that they felt with Kim, and her ability to walk staff through really complicated concepts, but in a way that was very, very understandable, and that folks felt safe asking questions. So we are in the teaching and learning business, and I just want to make sure that I mention that Kim, you're one heck of a teacher during the process, not just with the members of OSEA, but myself included, and all of us are better for it. Kim's also finishing her 3rd year, going into her 3rd year of business manager, business official, what's the program called?
Business Manager Institute.
New Business Manager Institute, thank you. And she'll be through that program this coming year, so that's pretty cool too. So going back to the slide, we made significant investments in our staff, in our classified staff, especially considering the last 2 rounds of bargaining. We had enrollment issues, we had COVID. I believe we really tried to make it right this time around. And of course, the majority of our classified employees are in the instructional assistant category. And we have 2 new positions in IA1s and IA2s. And the difference there, if we really want to talk about student educational equity, is that our IA2s work in our special programs. And that takes a special type of person to work in our special programs. And I'm saying that as a professional school administrator and also as a dad with 2 kids who have gone through the K-12 system in a specialized program, that it's the right thing to do. The work is hard. And I hope that we've done that group right with this contract. So a couple of things that we learned this time around, of course, this was our 2nd go-around with bargaining in 1 year. And we learned a lot going through the certified negotiations. And one of the biggest things we learned is that ground rules really do rule. And we spent a lot of time coming up with the ground rules together with OSEA to come together with a document that we all signed, OSEA and SFSD. Not only that, but we posted it for every meeting and referred back to it. And we had a couple significant, one in particular, one significant bump in the road where we were able to revisit, bring that issue to the table, revisit the breakdown in communication that was covered in the ground rules that we both sides agreed to, and get to a much better place. And so that was a huge learning that we've had in the prior round of bargaining with our other association, and will continue to be in future bargaining sessions a major piece that we will spend as much time on as we need to make sure that everybody understands the expectations of how we will do business and how we will treat each other. So having said that, it really set the tone for each meeting as well. And with that said, I'll answer any questions that you have now in general, or I'll turn it over to Dan, who will walk you through the language specifics in the contract. Any questions, general questions before we start? Okay. And Daniel, I think you're going to pull up Dan's slides. Thank you.
All right, so as Scott said, this was a big reach to get a 3-year agreement. And I think that besides, I think probably the best thing that a 3-year agreement does is it really demonstrates trust. It demonstrates trust that both sides can agree to something for 3 years and know that it's a binding agreement that we believe in each other. And certainly, as Scott alluded to, it certainly from our perspective gives us an opportunity to take a breath and know that we will not be bargaining we will not be bargaining with either association until 2025 when we come back with SFEA, which Scott is not wrong when he says feels like we've been bargaining since 2019. So we are very excited about the 3-year agreement that we reached with OSEA. So you received an update from me that kind of gave you an overview and outline. I organized that document kind of with what's most important, and this presentation is actually the opposite of that, where I'm going to kind of finish with what's most important. So it's going to look different than what you received from me in the PDF. So this just gives you a summary of the 26 articles that were updated, and we clustered them into these groups. So those are our 10 minor language changes. Some of these may have just had one word that was changed for a variety of different reasons. Very inconsequential types of updates there. So we're not going to spend any time going through those. So I didn't want to call them minor, but they didn't have necessarily a lot of weight to them. So I titled them Other Language Changes. And we had a change in the recognition clause, which better identified the difference between a substitute and a temporary employee. I'm not going to go through every single one of these other language articles, but I'll highlight a couple things. And one thing I want to maybe hopefully thread through this presentation, like Scott talked about, is things that were in the works for weeks, if not months. And so on this association rights and responsibilities article, one thing that has kind of plagued both sides is this idea of orientating new employees and getting people both from the district, getting a good orientation experience from the district, but then providing the union the opportunity under the law to provide an orientation to them. And so we had been mutually frustrated with the process, and so working through that through our labor management meetings, we actually added some language that both sides felt like this could actually work. on meeting both the needs of orientating new employees for the district and providing the union their opportunity to do that. So that's something, anything that took time even before bargaining started, you're going to hear me talk about it because, again, like Scott talked about, it's building that relationship. So here's a few of the other ones that had some changes to them. Our reclassification process, I won't say a lot there. We tweaked some wording there, but that's really served us well in making adjustments throughout the life of this last contract, and served us well going into this new contract with some of the new job descriptions that we talked about. And actually, a lot of other districts in our WSD region have asked us for a copy of this article. As jobs change, what's a good process to work with your association in reclassifying people if necessary? Any questions on any of those under that other column? So again, this is slightly different organized than what I sent you, but we had two what I would call significant language changes. And you may have heard that I think it's Senate Bill, I think it's 283. I don't know, I didn't mean to put you on the spot for a non-economic one there, Kim, but there was a Senate bill that passed at the late stages of the legislature that all classified employees are entitled to just cause. Just cause is a standard. It encompasses, I believe, about 8 different standards that have to be met in order to for an employee to be disciplined. And so the legislature added this, and so our Article 9 Discipline of Employees article actually changed quite a bit, and we actually gutted it. In my opinion, made it more simple. I think both sides felt like there was too much detail in it, and so we reduced a lot of the language, but the significant change is that our classified employees are entitled to just cause. The district must meet the just cause standard in order to discipline or discharge an employee. And then the grievance procedure changed in that we adjusted the grievance timelines. And I think this benefits both sides because determining the definition of a day and how many days do you get to respond, I think we cleaned it up. I think we gave both sides an equitable process by which both sides have to respond to each other. And then we also did remove the school board level of the grievance procedure. And it's not uncommon for the board to not be involved in a grievance procedure. And so we elected to, if the union is unsatisfied with the superintendent decision, then it would go from there to arbitration. It would not go through the board. All right, so even though a lot of people think about economic articles as the COLA or the insurance, there was several aspects of this contract that had economic components to it. So we're gonna go through some of those. Here's a list of what we're gonna cover. And we'll start with Article 19, emergency closure. Obviously in our district, emergency closure is always an issue, and this article keeps coming up for some changes. But some of the economic components of this is that if you are designated to work on site during a closure, hours will be paid at time and a half. And then if you're designated to report during a delay period, comp time will be performed, comp time for work performed during that delay period. So if we need somebody to show up at 6 o'clock during a delay period, then there's going to be comp time either at the end of that day or by the end of that week. And that had been a past practice, but had not been in our contract, and we really needed to clean that up because if you're doing it and it's not in the contract, you're going to have conflict at some point. And so getting in the contract was really important there. Article 21, our training and professional development. This is another one that goes back to conversations that have been happening for a couple of years. And so we increased what an employee can access I think it went from $450 to $750. And something that we really needed to do is give our classified employees access to a tuition reimbursement program. And so that $750 per employee can be used for tuition reimbursement. It can be used for professional development. And it also can be used for licensing, testing, any things of that nature that is in pursuit of a job, either within the scope of their current job or another job within the district that they might be aspiring to. So again, this was one where both sides came to the table wanting to see something here. So it made this article fairly easy to reach an agreement.
Question for you, Dan. Is that 750 between those two, or is the 750 for the professional development, and then there's a added tuition reimbursement? on top
Great
of that?
question. So $750 per employee, how they choose to use it. We actually kind of, at one point, we were trying to say for this amount and this amount for this, and then we kind of think we just decided it was a lot easier, $750 regardless of the use
Per school year.
per school year.
Okay.
And in, I believe it's May 1, that an employee can come back, and if there's still money, there's $15,000 set aside in this pool. And if there's still money remaining, they can apply for another $750 in May. So if they want to take another summer course, they could apply for another $750 to apply towards tuition, professional development, whatnot.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
So vacation, so for our 12-month employees, we've had issues over the years where we get a 12-month employee who may be coming to us from an industry, from a job where they've already acquired 2 weeks or more of vacation, and they get to us and then they have to wait to utilize vacation. And in some cases, we've had brand new employees have to take unpaid leaves. And so we just thought at least giving an employee 2 days after 6 months to give them a little bit of flexibility, so a little something, so that we're not forcing people to have to take unpaid leave or wait a year to access that. So 12-month employees get 2 days of vacation awarded at 6 months, which really is the end of their probationary period. And then we agreed to have a vacation cash out for employees with 10 or more years, and it should say of continuous service. So by 10 years of continuous service, they're getting over 3 weeks of paid vacation, and we have decided to, if they would like an annual cash out of up to 5 days, they can do that.
And you said that was annual?
Yes. Yeah. And then holidays, Juneteenth had been in an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, so it just was incorporated into the contract. And then for our 11-month employees, which are largely our secretaries, or they're now titled office specialists, we added 2 paid holidays to our 11-month employees, and that is Thanksgiving and the Friday after Thanksgiving. Oop. Told you this clicker was fast. That wasn't all me. Maybe it was. All right. So, in looking over my notes, I don't think this may not have been in what I sent you. I realized that I might have missed a copy and paste in the document I sent. But we have 2 sick leave savings options or cash out options for employees. So, if an employee has over 40 a balance of over 40 days, they can cash out 5 days. And now I want to point out that this has to be accrued in the Silver Falls School District. So this can't be sick leave that has come into the district. This has to be accrued within the district. And so if someone has a balance of over 40 days, they can cash out 5. And then when leaving the district after 10 or more years of service, they have an optional payout of 50%. As some of you might know, PERS sick leave has been a component of your PERS retirement, but for many of our newer folks, it will not be. And one of the things that both parties were interested in is encouraging people through either of these options, encouraging people to not view sick leave just like, if I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. And then, we have done some reporting to say that those folks that for whom there's no maybe benefit to keep it, use more days. And so this part of this is trying to encourage people. We definitely want people staying home if they're sick, but we also want to encourage attendance. So this was a mutual, we saw this as a mutual benefit. And then we also did match the sick leave bank language that we did with license. It's I would say all but identical. So now we get to the real meat and potatoes of the economics. So no changes for this upcoming year. We increased the opt-out in the second year of this contract to match what that is the same that's in the license agreement. And then in the following year, there is an increase in the monthly contribution. And so we've changed the title of Article 3 from salary to compensation because our employees are classified employees. It's a wage that they earn. It's not a salary that they earn. So we title it compensation. And spend a few minutes talking about this assistant reclassification structure. So this was something that was at least 6 months in the works before bargaining even began. This was something that we, I think both parties wanted to see changed, and as Scott talked about, really wanting to see what changes we could make for those that are working in our classrooms where our students who are more severely impacted would have a job description more aligned to their duties and compensation to match that. And so we have an instructional assistant 1 that encompasses those types of positions. And this is where Kim's brilliance and work really came into play, is to figuring out how do we do this in a way that everybody, because as you'll notice, the LRC did change, it went from G down to F, but how do we structure this compensation package in a way that benefits everybody? And those groups going from D to F or E to F, that's a significant investment with our folks that are working directly with kids, as you'll see in an upcoming slide. Our media assistant moved a column from F to G. And then our instructional assistant 2, which works in our specialized programs, went from G to I. So moving that's over 50% of our classified workforce is on that screen right there. That's a significant increase in their compensation by making those kinds of moves. Which is why this conversation started with classified many, many months ago in terms of the development of these job descriptions, them getting an opportunity to get feedback from their members, but then honestly having an honest conversation with them, because they would have liked to have seen this done a little sooner. We need this to be part of our bargaining, because this is a major investment. And then we did retitle our special needs, it was previously titled Autism Assistant, is now titled Special Needs Program Support Specialist. This is an area where we'd like to do more investment, where we have classified folks that are providing actually training for other classified folks, and in some cases providing training for our teachers as well, people that have a really strong background and knowledge in this area. So here's where you can see some of the numbers where in those lower columns, $1.25 per hour. In the middle columns, or the columns above, $1 per hour. And then we do have a significant percentage of our folks that are what you might call topped out in step 8. So re-indexing Step 8 above, step 7 is an investment. Our folks have been in our district for a long time, which I think this was a key factor in being able to reach that agreement on July. This was kind of the thing that got us there, I would say. If one thing did it that day, this might have been it. And then you can see our 3.25% over the next 2 years of the contract. So here's some other changes. So longevity bonuses are issued annually now after 8 years, and you have a more detailed summary of what those look like in what I sent you. We also increased the differential. We also defined the differential as anything in the hours worked from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So if you work between those hours, you get an hour differential. We also will reimburse employees for their fingerprinting fee after their probationary period. It's optional, but if someone wants to supplement their paid leave Oregon, they can do that with their contractual leave. I think that's referred to topping off, so if they're not quite getting the full benefit, they can use part of their contractual leave to make themselves whole. Did I say that correctly, Kim? Thank you. Notice most of the time if it's a financial related question, I make sure I check with my teammates for accuracy. And then also step advancements which take place July 1. If somebody's been with us, it used to be 100, they had to be with us 120 days to be eligible for the new fiscal year, new school year step increase. Now they only need to have worked with us for 90 days to receive that step increase. So next steps, we are awaiting union ratification, which I believe is probably going to happen when the last week in August. So, and then goal would be to bring it for you for board approval, be the September board meeting, and then implementation. And I think in my email I talked to you a little bit about this. There's times where we did with license where we implemented before the board ratification. So I'll keep you apprised of those timelines, and if you have any concerns about any particular articles, we would need to know that. But a lot of times with, as far as payroll goes and being able to align to payroll cutoffs, it's definitely a benefit operationally to the district to have a date that aligns to our how we do timesheets and whatnot. So before I turn it over to Owen and ask him to maybe make a few comments, I do want to echo some of Scott's thanks. First of all, Dustin's here tonight, and Dustin was part of our team along with Brandon Larson. And between Dustin and Brandon, they provide a lot of insight because they oversee departments which are classified folks. A large percent of ours are classified folks. So having their insight at the table was very helpful. I do want to thank Owen for being so engaged in the process, and I think your advice during the latter stages and the last day especially were super helpful, and occasionally gleaning your legal insight was also very helpful. And Marissa Franklin is our HR and business specialist. She has incredible organizational skills, very prepared, allowed our team to really stay in the moment and be listening and thinking. She contributed advice as well, but just an amazing, amazing talent. But I cannot thank Kim enough, and echoing what Scott said, for her amazing skills in managing our financial proposals. But it's one thing to be able to give financial proposals that they being OSEA believe in and trust, but it's a whole nother level to be able to have the OSEA trust that you have their best intent in your communication and what you convey. And Kim, you do an amazing, amazing job, at conveying that I do have your best intent in what I'm trying to present to you, and you can't put a price tag on that. So really appreciate your work, Kim. Amazing. And to end with, like Scott said, the classified bargaining team came ready, willing to do the work, roll up their sleeves, did not want 2 weeks to go by without having a bargaining session, and having some sidebar conversations. That's where we solved a lot of issues, and having some private conversations to say, how do we work through these issues? And I also want to tip the hat to Vance Taylor, their president, for also diversifying their group. Brought 2 food service folks to the table, eventually got some instructional assistants to the table. So diversifying their group, I think, really helped. And so I really appreciate Vance's efforts in trying to get a diversity to the table. And with that, Owen, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say that it was an interesting experience for me. You know, the nature of bargaining is adversarial, but so you would expect that when you leave the joint table and people go off into their corners, that, you know, it'd be more Machiavellian. You'd be, you know, trying to give as little as you can and get as much as you can. But I was super impressed by the district team and the compassion, the concern that they had for OSEA employees, and just really recognizing the value that they bring to our district, the value that they bring to the kids. So that was, you know, just really heartening to me to see that. The other thing that was really heartening to me with our own team was just to see the competence that every one of them brought there. Kim, your knowledge is your expertise with the numbers. I don't think we could have done it without you. And I'll say too, Marissa is an absolute wizard with the spreadsheets and keeping everything organized as proposals are going back and forth. A mess of papers, but she really was instrumental in keeping us organized and on track. And then and to OSEA's credit, you know, everybody's willingness on the last day when we settled. I think we were scheduled to go from 8 to noon, and we kind of joked at lunch that, well, might need to save some of this for dinner, and sure enough, you know, we stayed through till, I don't know, 6 or something like that at night, and got it done. And so just the willingness to be at the table, to keep at it, and get it done was really impressive. And I want to say thanks to the OSEA team. They were more than just cordial. Some of them brought some levity and at needed times, and you know, and everybody really focused on the goal that was at hand. So it was a really great experience, and left me, again, just really heartened with our team and with our employees.
Thank you, Owen. Jennifer, I'm going to take the wheel back and finish up on my updates. I'll wait for Daniel to pull that up. And does anybody have any questions about what Dan presented?
I guess just one question. How many
Go ahead.
employees will be impacted by the new contract, if you have a rough number?
Well, the entire classified group, which is about 220, 225 employees. And so again, 50% of them falling into that instructional assistant category. So you're talking over 100 employees that are going to see a pretty significant benefit.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I just want to express appreciation to all the people that Dan mentioned, and especially Owen for spending all the time that he did on participation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't say also acknowledge Dan's role, because it was huge as a leader of our team. So thank you, Dan. You did a really nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Very well done, Dan. All right. Who can tell me what this has to do with?
Bond.
Bond.
November
The
election.
bond, right? Okay. 86 days to go. You're probably going to see that visual, counting down from now until Election Day. We have 86 days to go. Remember, we vote absentee, so it's even shorter than that. So this truly is a sprint to the finish line. Right now, I would say that, well, as you know, we have a strategic plan, and we spend our focus on 3 things in this district, and there they are in front of you, and I went over this during the Leadership Institute as well. Where I want to focus your attention is right here on 1/3 of it, which is our facilities bond, which gets back to our strategic goal of getting our facilities to reflect the love and respect we have for our children, our students. This is where every ounce of energy in this entire school district should be focused from now until Election Day. This is the biggest challenge facing this school district in its history. There's never been a bond passed that's affected every single building. And this bond will ensure that our schools are here for a very, very long time. And so I just cannot impress upon us enough, and because this is a public meeting, and all of you on the board have heard this ad nauseum, that this is where we must spend all of our attention until Election Day. Now, I want to go back to put this in perspective also, because 86 days may seem like a decent chunk of time, but really it's just a drop in the bucket. Because in 1718 is when this process actually started, with a population study, and then building assessments started under Andy Belando. And I'm the 3rd superintendent to scoop up the ball sometime around 2020, once the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee got going. And that was a 2-year process and 15 meetings, which is, well, we've been told, one of the longest long-range facilities planning processes ever in the state of Oregon. It's also one of the most comprehensive. It's an 800-page report. I encourage those listening and for our new board members just to read the executive summary, but all the documentation is there on our website. And as you know, we spent this last year going through listening sessions and the Bond Advisory Committee coming up with a bond recommendation that you unanimously approved as a new board. Our last board unanimously supported this. Our new board unanimously supports this. I think that says volumes about what we want for our future, what we want for our kids in Silver Falls School District, and what we want for future generations of kids who aren't even born yet. We really are making an effort to make this a focal point in our work. And so right now, the district has entered into information only about the bond. Information only. And as you see our new approved bond logo there, and we also have a political action committee. When I say we, I mean that's the advocacy nonprofit arm that is taking over the fundraising and all of that good stuff. So we've started that, the ball's rolling, and so I think it's always just an important reminder to know that as district officials, we are in a capacity to provide information only. These are hot off the press. I got these about 2 hours ago from Derek McElfresh. He and the publisher that's helping us with our information campaign. These are one-pagers for each school community. These are the updated versions from the ones that we shared at the Tell Us What You Think sessions, if you remember those. They were on the bond website as well. And this really outlines specifically what the projects are going to be here. And as you know, we've made a number of corrections to the draft one-pagers that we shared at our listening sessions. This will also be followed up by, of course, our general information about the bond and the proposal, the warm, safe, and dry for all of our schools, and then, of course, the new middle school. That's the the center point of this entire effort. We must get our kids out of that building. And I think you've seen this before. I covered it last week at the Leadership Institute. That is going out in English and in Spanish. And these are just some close-up views. I went over this also. Really, this is just the warm, safe, and dry for our schools, and then replace Silverton Middle School. And a really important part to take note of is this $4 million matching grant. So $4 million matching grant that we did qualify for if the bond is passed. So it is $138 million, but it's $142 million worth of scope. So that is actually a really positive thing. So it's really important that we describe this to our community also. That if they hear that number, 142 million, then you know that there's a matching grant involved in that. Okay? Now, one of the most important responsibilities we have as a school district when we're talking about the $138 million plus the $4 million matching grant is the $1.60 per 1,000 square feet of assessed value over the existing tax rate. I want to say that one more time. $1.60 per 1,000 square feet of assessed value over the existing tax rate. That is our message to our community, right there. Assessed value. That is something that I cannot say enough, because assessed value does not equal market value. It is significantly lower. And so if you look down here at the average assessed value of a home price in Silverton at $232,000, again, that's the average, and that's the average of the assessed value. The average market value is way higher than that. So that is really, really important to make sure that we clarify if people have questions. And then if we take that average, it's really $31 per month for the average assessed value property over the existing tax rate. So you will have access to this information. We will email it out to you. I think this slide is probably the most important because, first of all, this is complicated stuff when we start talking about bonds and how they're structured and everything else. And then it's important that we stick to the message that we have, that is the $1.60 per 1,000 of assessed value over the existing rate. Up here it says it again, an additional $1.60 per 1,000 of assessed value, and I just have that as sort of a repeat. Any questions there?
I would, just a clarification for that bottom one, for how people's brain works. We cannot risk people thinking that it's only going to be $31. We have to make clear with that it's on top, right, of what they already have.
Over the existing
Separated,
tax rate, yeah.
like it says, over the existing tax rate, but that should also be at the bottom, because just to make sure that it's super clear.
Yes.
$31 per month additional.
Yes.
Correct. Because I mean, I agree with Scott. Like the assessed value part is huge, because that can scare people. So like clearing that up for them, that's awesome. But I want to make sure people don't think that they're all going to be paying 30 or 40.
So average is, the average home would pay $31 per month, in addition to what they're currently
Correct.
paying for a term of 26 years.
Correct.
Right? I think that matters too.
Something like that. Or however you and Jeremy decide to go about it.
Now, you may get the question, why is it now 26? Why 26 years? And that's because the Bond Advisory Committee in the last meeting, at the very end of that meeting, decided to go with the 26-year because it would save the district over 50 million.
And that number's accurate, that interest, just that, what was the 4 years? The additional 5 years was $50 million worth of interest? I thought that math was wrong, but that's insane. Wow.
Prudent decision.
Yeah, very much so.
Questions?
In true transparency, if the bond was not, I hesitate to even say this because I don't want to say anything to discourage the bond, but by the same token, we're obliged for true transparency. And if the bond was not passed, at the year 27, that all changes. What I'm getting at is if the bond is passed, it's $1.60 now for, what, 4 years? But after that, true cost of the bond goes to 62 per thousand of assessed value.
Correct. Yeah, right
Don't
now,
want to lead people down the path that they're paying $1.60 for 26 years,
right.
when in fact that's not the case. That's
Yeah, and this graphic, I think,
and the graphic shows that.
Yeah.
But the wording of the other can
Yeah.
be rather misleading
Yeah.
compared to the
And I
graphic.
think it said additional. I think that's the key word, is making
Yeah,
sure that
and
people
they've
understand it's
got-
additional.
You know,
which, yeah, that wording is the resolution that was passed last month.
Yeah.
At the bottom of Exhibit A is exactly what it said, and it does have 26 years on there,
Right.
which is what we could add to that previous graphic. And that's the way bond counsel, that's the way the SCL 805 is
Right.
filed with Marion County, because they're really voting for what the additional tax is, but they do need to know that it's $1.60 on top of what is existing, and that will continue at that new level
Right.
till
yeah,
2049.
legally I understand
Yeah.
it's covered.
But you're right,
with the
and that's-
additional, but
That's why I
But-
really like this graphic, and it's posted on the FAQ,
Yeah.
and we'll
yeah, the
definitely point
graphic's
to
really
that.
good about how
Yeah.
it explains it, but don't want anyone saying tried to pull
Sure. Yeah.
shell game on it sort of thing.
And it is really complex. I
Yeah.
mean, I think
Yeah.
that's
Oh, yeah,
that's
just the whole
point.
idea between cessed and market and all that.
The other thing that makes it, I think, even more complicated for people that have been here for a number of years is when Phase 2 was passed, they went the other way. You know,
Yeah.
it was $2 or less, jumped it up to $3.50 for a few years until Phase 1 retired, and then it came down to 2 something, and we
Mhm.
whittled it down to right about $2 now.
Right.
But this is more of a level, you know.
And I think that's that's the feedback that I've gotten to, the same thing that Phil is saying, is that let's make sure that we're not setting our public up to think that in 2027 that there will be a change, that it stays at that
Mhm.
rate for, again, 26 years. So I
Mhm.
guess maybe the wording on the last slide, like I chimed in there, but it would be, your rate will increase by $1.60 over current rates, and then it will stay there for 26 years.
And Scott and Steve and Jeremy, I mean, who's on the admin team, is there a way to show from previous bonds, like a graphic of how much money we basically have to spend more because of these new projects for our other failed bonds? It's like the risk of not getting this done.
Mm-hmm.
If we come back, whereas how much more it will be. So we can't project what the future costs, but we can go back. So how much money this costs us by not getting
Well,
this done.
we've talked a lot at length about how best to present this information to our public. One thing we know for sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that things will become exponentially more expensive the next time we try to pass a bond. That is an absolute fact. But in terms of the specifics and all that, I think right now with 86 days to go, we need to make sure we're staying on message. Again, this is on the FAQ. And there's been a lot of feedback on coming up with this graphic. Other questions? I can't say enough how important your roles are as board members with your constituents. It is so important that if you're a board member or administrator in this district, that we clearly understand how to communicate this. I cannot overstate that. And one of the reasons why we're really trying to focus on staying on message is because you can imagine all the conversations going out there. If we get only a couple facts wrong, what those can morph into. And so I just want to say that as we close, that your role as individual board members, community members really, as individuals, you are community members, that this is so important if you're in conversation to be able to give that elevator speech.
The other thing that came up in some of my conversations with folks is I think, and we all want to have this too, because it's just part of our human nature, and we want to see where everything's going and every dollar is going to be spent, that the conversations be like, well, where's all the quotes and how did this number come up and where, you know, how much is it, why is every penny going to be spent?
I've heard that too.
And it's a hard one now because, you know, I engage and I talk to Scott about, okay, what's the best way to answer this too? And I think that we have to be really on point with that as well, and saying, look, we've used architects, we've used part of the long-range facility planning committee, we've used data that came out of that, we've used the Winneha group, who is, again, the gold standard in terms of consulting for these type of things, that these dollars that have been earmarked, no, they're not based off actual quotes from contractors. They are best estimates using the best standards we have with the best people possible, and they are padded with contingency. And that's how the $138 million is arrived at. And I've had to redirect folks saying, look, we will go out to bid once this bond is passed, but we have to come up with a best estimated and best figured number for this bond to fix all of our schools and to fix and build ourselves a new middle school. And this is the best number that with great consulting work we've come up with. You know, and I think another one is, well, what if it costs less than that? Well, that's for the bond advisory committee or the bond oversight committee to have a conversation with. But I think making sure folks, redirecting folks back to, look, this is the best estimate that with the gold standard folks at the Winneha group have come up with to meet the needs of warm, safe, and dry within our district. And it's hard because people do want to get in the weeds. I wouldn't mind getting in the weeds too, but we can't go there. We have to get this passed, and then we can get into the weeds part once it's all passed.
Remember also that since 2017-18 to now, how many hundreds of people, how many hundreds of Silvertonians have had input into what this bond should look like? I can't say that enough. And it's really important that as community members yourselves that you're able to reiterate that, because I still get questions where there's understanding that you current seven wrote the bond yourselves. And nothing could be further from the truth. This started a long time ago, and a lot of people have had input on this. And this truly is the great compromise, which is what happens in the public sector when we have an issue or challenge this gigantic. But I've really been proud of each and every one of the work groups and committees that we've had here. And I really do believe that we've come up with a bond package that truly makes sense and that we think our community will support.
I think you hit it, Scott, too. This is the best bond for Silver Falls right now and for next generations to come. Is there any perfect bond? No, right? But this is the best bond that we have looking forward and moving forward to get us to the point where we can be going to the next level with all of our facilities. But yeah, there is no perfect bond. Doesn't exist. this is the best bond for us right now.
I don't see it on the agenda, the PAC, that's
Yep, it's
It's
under
on.
board reports.
cool, good. Oh, there it is.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much for your attention.
All right, I think Steve is next with the finance and operations report. Okay, so 7B and 7B1 are both happening at the same time, so. All right, so we have Jeff Alderman, our facilities director, who's joining us for the first time tonight. Welcome.
Welcome, Jeff.
Yes. So one thing I'd like to do this year is by the December board meeting, I'm going to have each department team join me for a report, just so that we could put names and faces together and hear from them and what's going on. I obviously provide updates on each department as needed, as well as the financial report. And financial reports will continue resume next month. But tonight we have the facilities team here. We thought it was well-timed with all the conversation we have with the bond, and there's always a lot of things going on in the summer. So the team is going to report on some projects we have going on now and will be happening through the school year. But we have Jeff Alderman, Helen Fetch, and Dustin Haney here. They're our leaders of our facilities department. And I'm just going to start really quick with welcoming Jeff Alderman to Silver Falls. I know some of you had a chance to meet him at last Monday's Leadership Institute. He started with us on July 17th and came to us from North Clackamas, and he's going to just take a couple minutes to introduce himself and his background.
Good afternoon. It was a pleasure to meet all of you at the Leadership Institute that I got to speak with. It's nice to meet some of the others that I hadn't got to yet this afternoon. It's like Steve said, I came from North Clackamas School District. We had 36 sites and 31 schools, so I got to participate in a bond that was kind of concluding when I got there, but I spent a year and a half with it. I was able to go through a lot of the trials and tribulations of some of the closings of a bond. It's quite interesting once you get to the end of a bond, what's left and what we can do and what we can't do. So I learned a lot. Hopefully I can utilize our staff and our resources, train them up, have them ready for our hopeful bond. Very excited for the idea of that happening. I can't thank these fine folks enough for their support and kindness in getting me going, getting me in the right direction, showing me the right people. Excellent staff. I've had a chance to meet all but one of the facility staff, so I'm hoping to meet them soon. Excellent group of people, very dedicated, very good. Looking forward to building the team and making a good cohesive unit where we can do a lot of good things together. Between Steve and Scott, I couldn't be more thankful for a group of people to lead. Honestly, excellent in every way. The support, the kindness, and the leadership's outstanding. So that I wasn't expecting that level. It's just exceptional. One project that I've been kind of intimately familiar with from the get-go as part of my interview was the pre-K building that is finishing up at the moment. It took the old house, Palmer's house, and is turning it into a pre-K. We're fairly well completed with the project. We've got fencing, some landscaping, and removal and reinstallation of some playground kids equipment to go in. That'll be the final stage in that. The painting's pretty well done. The flooring should be finished up this week, and we can begin to move all of the pieces and parts back into the building and have it ready for staff on August 20th. So Dustin did an awesome job coordinating a lot of the contractors and making a lot of good decisions on material and making sure the timelines were in good order. I can't thank him enough. Yeah, I guess that's what I know about that project. I'm still getting my feet under me. I'm still trying to figure out what's and where's, who's, a lot of the history on the sites and the buildings, but I'll get up to speed as quick as I possibly can. I look forward to doing the best job possible for you, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to serve the community. Yeah, can't be more thankful. I really do appreciate the opportunity. So thank you. Pass the next one on to Helen. She's going to talk about our lock changeover at the high school here.
Well, I'm going to talk about Helen and Dustin first. But thank you very much, Jeff. Really appreciate it. For you, those of you that don't know, the house is out there by the tennis courts was at the northeast corner of this property, and it used to be used for our CTP program and has been vacant the last few years because the house needed, well, it was our TLC program and the house needed TLC. But it's also going to be, besides the preschool, which has been housed at Mark Twain the last couple of years, it has enough space to house our specialists, licensed specialists that roam between many different schools. One of the, it's our school psychologist and a few other folks that don't really have a home base, and so that was an agreement we made in the licensed bargaining agreement, and so it really turned out well. It's going to be a nice place for them, and one of the other parts of the project was Brett Milliken's team has updated the connectivity over there, so it'll be great. I want to speak about Destin and Helen. First, Destin. Destin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you just started your 22nd year in the district. Is that right? 19 of which principal at many different schools. So most recently, Central Howell and Prattham. Destin is just starting his third year with the facilities department, and this third supervisory or management position in the department was something we've needed for many years, and we finally made a move here a couple years ago, and Destin was the perfect fit for this. He did have quite a bit of knowledge around facilities, but it was also nice to bring in someone that has the principal's hat to facilities, because we work so closely with principals on how their custodians are doing and what the needs are in the building and that type of thing. And for those of you that know Dustin, he is extremely organized. If you're ever in the district office, please stop back in the corner there and take a look at the glass board. You've seen it, right, Josh? It's pretty impressive. That's Dustin's work there. So yeah, Dustin just does so many things. He keeps us organized, many special projects. He's our surplus property master. Does water testing at many of our schools on a either biweekly or monthly basis. He provides supervision assistance to Helen for the custodial positions, handles some procurement. It's gotten heavily involved in our bond project. He was at all of our BAC meetings and all of our Tell Us What You Think sessions. And many people don't know, he also spends time helping Heather Johnson with transportation logistics, meeting at least once weekly with First Student, if not more, as well as some food service supervision as well. So huge. Helen just completed her 29th year. Yes, so about to start her 30th year in the school district. I would say, and I think everyone in this room would agree, that you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that cares more about their job than Helen.
I second that, Steve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Helen leads by example. She takes care of her people. She is our custodial supervisor. I often marvel at how Helen can come up with scheduling and staffing magic. I would say at least 95% of the school days in this district that we're needing to fill a hole somewhere. We may have we might be down a staff member or trying to fill a position, somebody out with illness or possibly an injury. And so she's always shuffling the schedules and making things work, and oftentimes she's the one in the schools doing the work. Her office is right back there in, is it conference room B? Yeah. Yes. So she has a good eye on the high school here. Jeff and Dustin work out of the district office. Again,
And Steve, if I could add that she also has an excellent eye at 4:30 in the morning at the top of Crooked Finger when she's texted me during the middle of the winter.
That was actually on my list.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. We get a lot of great weather reports from from Helen at 4:30 a.m. From Crooked Finger, 1,600 feet. And she's often the first one on the scene for late night emergencies. You know, there was an alarm that went off at Silvercrest a week or two ago, 2 a.m. She was the one who went there, helping her staff. A few times I know she's had, you know, staff member have a broken down car. She's the first one there. She's the one that takes an injured worker to see a doctor, you know, that type of thing. So just amazing. And then Dustin and Helen, we had a 45-day gap when Lauren left at the end of May. They just kept things rolling. So we just can't thank them enough for their and the three of them have already formed a great team, and they're really connecting really well with the rest of the group. So anyway, so I'm going to turn it over to Dustin and Helen for their part of the report.
Okay. Well, one, I'm really thankful to have all of these on the team too. It's been great. Makes my job a lot easier when you have as much support as these guys provide. So it's been very, very nice. Over here, as you probably have seen, I'm really short, so good luck here. As you've seen, a lot of our buildings, almost all the buildings are done except for here on rekeying buildings. And it's been really super nice because it's been so much more economical. In the long run, we're rekeying all of this building. It's coming up actually on the 16th. We have a walkthrough with contractor. And we will go through, they have been provided blueprints, original blueprints, along with what the school has pretty much labeled for each room so that there's no confusion for contractors when they go through and do the actual keying of the building. So this is the last one on the project here. This is the biggest one. It's going to be really nice because we're going to be able to make keys ourselves and not have to order them in the past like we used to. Lauren had laid all that out to where we had a really nice, he had all this done before, where it's all laid out in families. We know numbers on how to create keys if we ever have somebody lose a key, if we have any of that kind of stuff, and more safe for the buildings as for staff. So so what they're going to do is the contractor is going to meet us on Wednesday, the 16th, to do a walkthrough. And he'll have his contractors, and then they'll go through and look at everything, and then from there they'll start immediately on the 17th, and then the next 2 weeks they're just planning on hitting all the inside of this building, starting from Sector A. He gave us a coordinated list of where they plan to be, and in doing so they'll provide keys for us, and they'll be able to get, so we won't have to worry about people not being able to get into classrooms. We still want to make sure that while this process is going on, that people have they're safe in their rooms, you know, even if it goes into school, the school year, depending on, you know, being able to get any of the hardware and things like that. We have the hardware for the indoor process, then once they'll be in two parts. The second part will be the exterior, but for now we're just going to do the interior. So they'll go through and do that. They'll hit it really hard the next following 2 weeks coming up. So that'll be really good to know, and we'll stay in really close communication with them to make sure that we do not have hardships, make sure it's good for staff so they're not left out in the cold wondering, oh, gee, how do I get into my room? What's going to happen? So, and then when the second part comes, they'll also get the cores and the rest of the keys. And like I said, we can easily make the keys, copy the keys. We will have all of those things in our hands, and we'll have it all put together, and it'll be actually very nice.
So what's the primary change that's occurring that's going to make things safer? Did it have to do with which way we're getting into classrooms, those types of things?
Being able to lock from the inside.
Yeah. We have, like, if you look at our gyms, the main gym, you have to reach outside to lock the door. Where the auxiliary gym and the wrestling gym, you can just lock it from the inside, no going outside. And that's going to be huge for staff. It'll make them feel much more safer. So, working with Chown as the vendor that we're working with, the gentleman that we met, we have a lot of confidence in that gentleman. He's been doing it for many, many years. This isn't his first rodeo, and he really was very key to helping us plan this. And then we worked with the administration to help coordinate what would be best to work where. So it's really coming along actually pretty good, and I think I have full confidence in him. I think it's going to go really well for us. So. And we have one other thing I just want to say. We're getting, Lauren also implemented the new keypads everywhere that are going to be standardized. We all are using our last 4 digits of our social, and it makes it so much easier. When you mentioned going out to alarms, I've been responding to alarms for years at all the schools. I've been to every single one of them, and I can now look on my phone and see if I get called at 3 in the morning, what's happening in a building. If I see someone's moving through the building, it's going to set off more motion sensors. I'll know if doors are open, all those types of things. It is so much more helpful because you just never know nowadays who's in a building and what's happening. So you can case that building before you ever have to be on site to know, gee, do I need to have the police there? Do I not need to have the police there? I mean, I pretty much kind of can tell, but it's been really super helpful. And this is the last one on to get finished. And when it's done, and that'll be again tomorrow, the pads are going to start going in. And we can look on and we can put in our own people. We can know, we can see reports of what's happening in the buildings. We don't have to pay extra for anything. We now have all that information on our computers. So it's going to be really great once that's all done. So, and again, it'll just be a learning curve for everybody. We'll go do a training for them and get them all educated on everything. So I think it'll be much more safer for everyone, and it'll be a lot more easier to use. So.
Where did you say the keypads were going in at?
Well, they'll be located probably where all of the existing ones are now.
Okay.
So, and I'm not quite sure of the zones. Once Casey Stadley is the contractor, and he'll begin that tomorrow. So he'll give us all that information, and then we'll even actually be able to, like, if we get a phone call and it says, you're having trouble in zone 19 or zone 1 or whatever, it's like, okay, what's in zone 1 and what's in zone 19 or whatever. It'll be helpful. We'll now be able to look at that. Oh, okay, so this is this area. I was just actually able to see that here not too long ago, and it's going to be really super helpful. So we can problem solve. Like if we have troubles on anything or whatever, we'll be able to hopefully figure out and not have to have somebody come in and do that for us.
Great.
So it'll be a lot nicer. Just really nice all the way around. So.
That alarm project would have been completely long ago, but when I was getting the alarm panels in at the time, they were back ordered for many, many months.
And they're easier paths to manage too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you don't, it's not, it's easy, you see right then there whether the system's armed or not armed. And so you're not arming it on yourself or someone else.
I've been there, Helen. I've alarmed myself in the district office before. Yep.
That's right.
And it's much easier now. Thank you.
So yes, the preschool, the rekeying, a variety of other projects. Also, the Central Hall basement came on our radar this spring. Some staff were having some concerns. We had the air quality tested. It confirmed that there was an issue down in the basement. So we completely emptied out the basement. We had a contractor come in and basically scrubbed down all the walls with grinders, filled in cracks, sealed everything, painted or sprayed a penetrant on the cement to all the areas that needed the cement walls, and then double coated all of those areas that were treated. Then we had another contractor come in and paint the entire basement, ceiling and all of the walls. And now we're waiting for electronic damper control system to be added to the furnace, which will add the appropriate amount of fresh air into that system. And then once that's done, we'll get it air quality tested again to make sure that everything is safe. I'm anticipating that everything will be just fine. We had some health concerns in the middle of June, and we tested the air quality in the office, the staff room, and the 2 classrooms up above the basement, and there was actually more mold spores or fungus spores in the air, in the outside air, than there were in any of those 4 locations interior. So we're expecting, with all the cleaning and all the measures we've taken for that basement to be usable again with staff and students. That's the goal, because that space is really critical for them to have their music program in. Otherwise, that music teacher has to be on a cart, which is not an ideal way of teaching music. Any questions about the basement?
Well, just the basement, you said it was safe, but I remember reading the report, it was all within the standards already for public safety already. It did not violate those levels, correct?
Yeah. I'm throwing out safe because that's just and that's our general goal is to maintain the safety of the basement. But yes, when we cleaned out the entire basement, there were some boxes that were on the ground next to a cement wall that had wicked water over time. I don't know how long, but over time. So we're just guessing that was the moldy smell, accounted for the moldy smell. So once they were out of there, everything was dried up, everything was cleaned up, everything was painted, sealed. We're anticipating that there won't be any issue any longer.
Thank you.
That's our report, unless there's any other questions.
No question, but just thank you all for coming. It was good to meet you
Yeah.
last week at the
Yes.
Leadership
Yeah.
Institute, and grateful for the work you do and keeping our buildings up and running. So really thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you very
information.
much.
Thank you.
One more thing, Jeff has been a great addition to our team. He brings a lot of fun and happiness and jovial attitude to the team each day, and he knows a lot of things, like Lauren knew a lot of things. Jeff knows a lot of things too, and I'm sure our district will benefit from that over time.
Jeff also made it through one heck of a selection process, too. And Jeff, that might have been one of the toughest processes we've run to date. So thank you for being here. You did a terrific job.
Sounds like it's a good match then. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for all you do too. I know you guys spend countless hours, so thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Helen.
All right, so that was our administrative reports. We have discussion items next. We have the food service rates for 2023, 2024. This is an action item later in the meeting. Dan sent a little update for us via email. Are there any other discussion points that we want to talk about?
I would just like, if those 3 points, Dan, would it be possible for you just to hit real quick, just so that it's known out there beyond us here? I mean,
Yeah, great questions, and Steve, you can fill in any gaps that I miss here, but Phil's questions, which I think are, and even Josh sent me some questions as well. So what percentage of the meals program is covered by money paid for meals? About 40%. And then there's a process known as the paid lunch equity, the PLE, that is run to determine those when prices are changing, and they also take into consideration participation rates and comparisons to other districts. So it's a tool that they use through the state that hasn't been run. The last time it was run, it was in 2019, 2020. Obviously, a lot has happened during those years, and so our prices. I think probably what caught people's most attention was the drop in the high school price, and that was to increase participation. And then there was just also some intentionality to get it to 25, 50, 75, those levels, to make it easier budgeting and families and stuff like that. So I think those are the factors, and it would be great to have Tim. I'm sure it's something we'll probably do, is to have Tim Lemke, who's our nutrition services director, works for Sodexo, come. We had Marina previously come and make some presentations to the board and talk a little bit about their program. Probably be good to have Tim come in here at some point here in the fall to introduce you and for allow you to ask some questions of him. So.
Yeah. In the paid lunch equity tool is actually, there's a lot of different requirements. I mean, ODE manages it, but it's a federal program, National School Lunch Reimbursement Program, and the paid lunch equity tool is something that must be run to make sure that for districts that tend to run a surplus, which we're not one of them, districts that typically have 60 or 70% free and reduced, we have been mostly 35 to 40% and even lower more recently. But for those that do have more free and reduced participants, they tend to run a surplus. And so you can't, most of the time you have to increase your price, even if you don't want to, for your paying students and families, because you can't you can't keep your prices down because your program's running a surplus due to the reimbursement you're getting through the federal program. So that's really what that's for. We were actually fortunate enough in 21-22, I think for the first time in many, many years, to actually be slightly in the black with our program, but that was because when we came out of COVID, they continued the free meals for all, and all students were back in school, so the participation rate went up and we were getting that full reimbursement. But last year they went back to the, at least I think at the beginning, slightly after the year started, I think they went back to the old rules. But there are some supplements that are involved now that help. They have it's another reimbursement they have for. They increased the amount that they're reimbursing through a special supplement, and they also provided 3 rounds of supply chain assistance funds because of the increase in food as well as the lack of availability. So that has helped us a little bit too. We still don't know exactly where we ended up for 22-23. We're still closing the books, but they're also talking about it still could come for this year. The possibility of lowering the bar for the percentage to qualify for free or reduced down to possibly a 25% district-wide. Right now, it's called community eligibility provision. You have to be above 40% to be able to qualify for that, and we don't qualify for that district-wide. But if it does get lowered to 25, that could really be a game changer for us, and we're waiting to hear if they're actually going to make that move or not. So the other thing that we did basically rely on Tim's recommendations, and I do also like that he's rounded these all to the nearest quarter. It's just easier for, I think, families to think about and also just to manage.
Well, I have some feedback. I know the food's good in the morning because I keep getting, hey, you owe us money. I'm like, what's going on? My daughter's sneaking breakfast.
Oh,
And so I'm
okay.
like, just give the secretary, all right, here's another $20. And, so, I do have a question about, the balances that people accrue and how the district does of, I mean, there's a lot of times that I just write stuff off. I don't know if the district does that. We don't go after people, do we, for their balances, like at the end of the year, or do we write that off as a loss? Is that a tax? Like, how does that work, Steve?
We have not been, since COVID, and there was also before COVID there was a no shaming bill that was passed at the state legislature. So, and rightly so, you can't haggle a student for, hey, you don't have enough money in your account. Sorry, we're not going to, give you food, because then it's, they call it the no shaming bill, and that was good. But in terms of the bills that we've had, I mean, Dustin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't, since we've been back, we've done that in the past, and it's been pretty rough, acting like a collection agency.
Well, you get an email, I know, because
Yeah.
I've been, my kid's account is.
Yeah, I think that's just an auto email
Yeah.
from mealtime, I think. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how I know to go in, is because
Yeah.
I get an
So
email.
there's that, yes, but in terms of, we know schools have made courtesy calls, there's that, but we haven't taken it, yeah.
And we won't.
And coming out of the pandemic, we did add lunch service at Central Howell, so that's something that to try to increase that participation. So they have provided that through busing meals out there and coming up with a system that worked for that school. So.
All right, we will take action on those meal prices later in the meeting. Next is also an action item later in the meeting, the board superintendent working agreement. Debbie changed the dates. We didn't have any wording feedback during our discussion during the work session. So she just changed the date basically at the top. But this is another time for us to discuss the working agreement.
Jennifer?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just, excuse me. I just want to make my point just clear. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I just want to make clear that the face of the agreement, in other words, the motive behind, I have absolutely no problem with. And I trust everyone here will have good decorum, be civil, is here to move forward in whatever direction, what's best for kids. And that we're not all going to agree all the time, lockstep, but we'll always agree to disagree, sort of thing at the worst. And I fully believe that. And in believing that, I think we're missing an opportunity to show our constituents that we do have trust in one another as a team. And without this, and I understand where it comes from, that was explained as far as a couple years ago, but I believe this is for this year, and I believe participants have changed, I believe times have changed, and I just think modeling it is better than printing it. And so that's where I'm coming from. And so any opposition or anything I may have to the document itself has nothing to do with how I believe we as a group should work and can work. Just want to make that clear.
All right, sounds like we don't have any other discussion to make, so we will move forward to the next item, which is the calendar and budget, board budget calendar. And this was not originally on the agenda, but because we had a little bit more time since the integrated guidance got postponed, we wanted to just present this to you. Debbie pointed out to us, and she's done it on that document that's attached to board book, that December 25th is the scheduled work session. We typically have just foregone a work session in December because people are on vacation, but it might be good because we have these 3 dates just to do it sooner rather than later. Make the decision on that. So tell me about the second one, Debbie. The work session, the fourth Monday is the first day of spring break. Third Monday is during conferences. So we're going to want to deal with that, like make a decision one way or the other. Am I reading that right?
And why I brought up conferences is because it would, I don't know
Here.
if this room is used or the commotion here, so.
And we have also, I think we have also not had a work session in March as well for same reasons. Yeah, if I remember correctly. And then the last one is that the fourth Monday is Memorial Day, so we're not going to want to do that. So I guess this is just an opportunity for us to give some provisional feedback, and we can talk more about it at like the next work session.
I guess my question would be, do we have to have by law we can remove a meeting?
Yes.
Do we have to make it up?
No. We need to have a we should have a robust set of meetings, I think, but we can generally get all the work done with kind of what's here minus a couple work sessions. That's pretty typical of my time on the board.
The December one's always usually canceled.
Yes.
because
We're a very unique school district in that we meet twice a month.
Okay.
It's very, very unusual, but
What's typical, Scott?
Once.
Once.
And then a quarterly work session
Okay.
typically. Some boards meet every other month. So it's wonderful that we have multiple points of contact, every few weeks, but it is rather unusual.
So that's just something to keep in mind and if your mind is percolating over this between now and our next meeting, go ahead and offer your feedback to me or Debbie, because we'll come up with something. If we have ideas ahead of the meeting, we can propose something different.
I have an odd one. The December 11th meeting, that joint city council one, just odd because I might be gone. Is that one I could zoom into, for that one? Because it'd be more, I know I could do it here, but where would that one be meeting? At the city hall?
The joint meeting will be here.
Here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sweet.
I've met with the mayor and
Okay.
yes, we've set that date. It'll be here.
Yeah, because by law, we have to make Zoom an option
Cool.
now, so,
Awesome.
yeah.
When they get the new city hall up, it'll be nice to have a joint meeting there. And we
Yeah.
have all the technology.
Okay, I'm going to move us on then to the public comment statement. I just wanted to make sure that it was my choice to put it on the agenda, that we still agreed with that. I think we did a extensive editing either last year. Last year. So I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance to look at it. We don't need to take action on it. I just wanted to draw awareness to it, and if you have comments, let's talk about them. I think we had to do a lot of editing because of that hybrid nature of our meetings now, because we had a statement that was just based on the old style.
We also condensed it. We made it bullet points instead of
Yes.
one big paragraph.
Yes, and the bullet points are quite nice. We wanted to pare those bullet points down, but we kind of all decided that we needed them. Yeah, any comments? One thing that is not related to necessarily the document, but one thing that we can consider is having like a sign-in sheet for the public. Because sometimes a family will come up and they'll give us their experience, and it's not really appropriate for us to respond, but somebody from the staff, maybe it would be good for them to respond, but we don't know their contact information. So that is one thing that I've noticed that might be helpful, because we did have a situation where the family left before I got a chance to say, hey, wait, give us your contact information. Because we can't, often, a lot of times we will get comments that it really isn't appropriate for us to make comments on. So, but we do need to, follow up, because we want to take care of them.
Not specific to the document, but in the similar theory, just providing some type of like visual timer. I don't know if we can do that with the via Zoom, or if we can provide a clock just so that as folks are coming through, they can better manage their time. If they've got 30 seconds left, I think that would be beneficial for folks to help self-regulate.
Yeah, I think that would be great if we can make that work.
Like a digital readout, like right here or something like that.
Or on the screen for the people who are remote. I mean, that's kind of the complication, is that you have two different systems that you have to maintain. And so it's something that I've had on my mind for a long time, but it's just like figuring out how to make that happen is the other piece.
See what we can do.
Yeah, it seems like both would be easy enough to do.
It is nerve-wracking to get up there and talk,
Oh, I
especially around, things you're like sensitive about.
And we have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Yeah.
Goes quick.
Yeah, I guess the only one that I'd have a curiousness about is like, because I know that I ran into this once, was like, you want to address certain things and you're trying not to address an individual member, but then also, First Amendment, like just that teeter-totter of how that works with, what people can say, not say, and how are we the arbiters of what is allowed to be said or not said? That's an odd one for me.
I think I had a conversation with Spencer Lewis at OSBA when we had a situation where we thought that there could be some discussion about an individual district official. And basically the advice was you can make whatever procedure that you want and execute that procedure. Unless it's challenged, and I think it depends on case law, and so at this point, he didn't see any issues with making rules that fit your organization. So maybe Owen might have more.
Well, I think that we're conscribed by whatever's in our authority, and so if it's outside of our authority, which oftentimes a lot of things are outside of our authority, then we can limit testimony about that. So individual employees, for example, outside of our authority, we can not take that testimony.
Oh, because that's not, that's
Right.
the superintendent's job.
And the other thing you might want to weigh in there on that is whether are you more worried about the risk of a free speech claim against you or an employment, because you did not protect someone's employment because you didn't want to infringe on someone's free speech. You're more likely to get a complaint from an association or an employee for not, so you're weighing that out.
It's a great point, Dan.
What's more likely?
What's more likely to happen? You're more likely to get a complaint because you did not protect an employee than you are for a free speech allegation.
It's definitely something to consider. That's.
It worked well. Watched you guys when you guys changed it last year, and it seemed to be okay, and everybody was very respectful.
Well, I think we're not shutting off the free speech too, because if somebody does want to say something about an employee, we have the whole complaint process that they can write in on. So we're not censoring their free speech, so to speak. We have an alternate vehicle. This just isn't the vehicle to do it.
We've certainly been through tough times as a school district and not had an incident.
And I will resend you a PowerPoint from the Hungerfords that they did probably about a year and a half ago when board meetings were becoming more newsworthy, and they were providing some outline for boards as far as kind of some do's and don'ts and case law. And so I will find that PowerPoint and send that to you so that you can kind of look at some of the case law and some of the guidance.
Thank you, Dan. That's helpful.
And also to Dan's point, you look at the remedy. If somebody, if we're wrong and we limit somebody's speech, they make a complaint, there's next month, they can come back and testify if that happens. But if somebody does give testimony, we can't take that back.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. All right, any more comments on this? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we all had a chance to weigh in. The next one is the board committee operation agreement, public meeting decorum. Again, this is referenced in our public comment statement. And I have I'm not going to say my piece right now, but it's referenced in our public comment statement, so I wanted to make sure that, again, we had a chance to look at it. We do not it's not an action item. I don't think we have to make any changes, but I wanted to put it in front of us to see what you have to say. Oh, and background on this. Tom's not here. I was hoping. I think I might be the only person here that was in on this. I wasn't necessarily in on this, but this was developed by Lori and Janet probably 3 years ago. Yeah. And basically, it's like having norms for the people who we invite to be on committees, like the budget committee, The bond advisory committee technically would be, this would be our policy. The bond oversight committee that's going to be coming up. Basically, any board sponsored activity where we appoint members, this would apply. Now, did we go over this in the BAC or in the Long Range Facilities Committee meeting?
No.
No. So and this doesn't live anywhere. It lives on Board Book and in Debbie's computer. So I guess I'm leading with the wonderings I have about this.
You need it, is what you're saying.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, I think, again, what did he say, John, at our Leadership Institute on Monday? The best time to fix the roof is when it's the weather's sunny, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that it makes sense to have norms, but, like, where does this live? And I guess I'm not questioning the validity of it, just that's one of the things that crosses my mind when we talk about this decorum policy, so.
I think it's a good idea.
If it's utilized, it's similar to kind of our communication agreement that we have with the superintendent. So if we're going to be using it for subcommittees, they should utilize it. And I think it's a good maybe reference point on how, again, I think most people are going to follow these without having to go over it, but just to provide that guidance if we're utilizing it. If it just lives and no one pays attention to it ever, it's probably going to be somewhat useless. So maybe we just need to start implementing it.
And the biggest one we're probably going to use this in is with the budget committee. I think that's where the onus with this came out. So, but yeah, making sure if we're going to commit to using it, to your point, Derek, let's go ahead and reference it.
Well, I think that's partially up to us as well, is to remember that it exists.
If you're gonna use it, one simple way to handle that would be you wouldn't have to have that many copies. These groups we're talking aren't that big. Just have a laminated copy of it,
Like,
and stashed away and brought back to the next meeting and laid there.
All right, I just wanted to put that in front of y'all to make sure that we are on the same, that we are aware of the issues. Debbie does attach it to Board Book because it is referenced in our public meeting statement. So it lives there, but we have opportunities to, make people aware of it, I guess.
I guess I have one last question on this because it brings up like code of conduct, even in, this is referencing public meeting decorum, but how we conduct ourselves privately people know we're board members. So I was curious, like, I remember our oath and whatnot. Was there something referenced about, me not going to a football game and ripping my shirt off and running down the 50-yard line? Just as an example.
You are a former national
only
champion.
if we win the championship again. But I don't remember really seeing something like that as far as, because this
Policy.
referencing, okay.
We have policy. This was more to cover the people who aren't board members.
Okay.
Because we have something that we are supposed to be adhering to already, but
Okay.
yeah.
That'd be inappropriate unless it's a fundraiser for the football team
Trim
or homecoming.
that
That would be
fox in my
fine.
chest
Yes.
here.
Yeah, and maybe this is just budget committee because it's a public meeting. I don't know. It's just something to
Mm-hmm.
consider.
Okay.
All right, moving back to, I hate it when this happens. Sorry, it's gonna take me just a bit.
Looks like we're on policy reads.
Policy
Second
reads, yeah.
reading.
Okay, second reads for policies. We're just gonna treat these as a bunch, and if anybody has anything that they wanna discuss regarding any of the policies, there were some changes. Dan sent those out. That was based on the feedback from the first read. Is there any other comments about these policies?
Just want to thank Dan for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something you whip out in 2 seconds.
And I did reference in my email that I did check with legal counsel regarding, because, Josh, you had sent me some suggested language changes, and I kind of commented that these come straight out of the legislation. And Lisa Freely, who's one of the attorneys we work with at the WSD, she said that OSBA takes it straight from the legislation and puts it right on the policy, and you're probably not going to see anything different when it's coming straight from an ORS. So.
And we know that because it's footnoted at the bottom that it
Yeah.
comes from ORS.
And they're typically written very broadly by legislatures, so they can be applied very broadly. So they don't necessarily make it as user-friendly as you'd like it. So there's a lot of interpretation when a situation comes up that's very tight, and you're looking at this broad thing, trying to figure out, okay, so how do I apply this to this situation?
All right, we don't often have board reports, but we have a board report today, and we'll probably have one until the election because we can advocate for a bond, whereas staff cannot. The Political Action Committee has been meeting, and can we promote Hillary Dumitrescu? She's going to give a report about what the PAC's been doing.
Hi.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? I'm going to see if I can start my video. Here we go. Can y'all see my messy office?
Yeah. Thanks for hanging in till 9 o'clock, Hillary.
It was super fascinating. God bless you all. Your apparent fascination with policies and procedures. I didn't have any ideas for fundraisers until Josh mentioned running down the football field with his shirt ripped off. So we might be hitting you up, Josh. We have formed a PAC. We are waiting on our measure number, unless Steve tells me we have one.
No, the SEL 803 is going to be filed in the next couple of days. So hopefully by the end of the week, yeah.
We're waiting on that before we can sort of push the final submit button and be an official entity. And a political action committee, if you don't know, is sort of a cross between a corporation and a nonprofit. We don't need a board like a nonprofit. We simply need a couple of folks to be fiscally and procedurally responsible. And the three folks who have stepped up are Celeste Richardson, Leah Rue, and myself. And I'll be playing the role of treasurer with Cindy Jones, helping me a lot because she shoved me into this role. God love her. But she's still gonna help me out, she says. So we are focused on getting out the vote, getting people to remember to vote, to understand that this is a bond that simply must pass, because our other options are all awful. And so we are really focusing our efforts on encouraging people to vote, encouraging them to vote in the positive, and also being available to answer questions as they crop up. Those of us who are teachers know that a lesson is rarely learned until the student is ready to hear it. So a lot of our folks haven't heard about a bond. The first, whiff they may get of a bond is that, oh gosh, it's going to raise my taxes. And that's our job, is to come in and reassure them it is going to increase our taxes. It's going to be approximately $31 per month for most of us, maybe a little bit more. Actually, crunch the numbers. If your house is worth a cool $1 million in assessed value, it's still only going to be $133 a month increase. So I figure if you have $1 million property, you can afford, the little bump. But we've done that. We've done that work. We have materials at the ready to sort of guide people through what the changes will look like. But we are really focusing on not just the $138 million, but the $138 million plus $4 million dollars worth of improvements that this is going to bring to our district. Improvements that will certainly serve to raise everyone's property value, making the slight bump in taxes sort of moot. We're looking at a multi-pronged effort, making big use of the R-Town. That goes out to something like, gosh, I think the last I heard was 15,000 mailboxes. It has a huge reach. It's going to reach all of our folks who are not on social media, although we do plan to have a social media presence. We're really going to be focusing on endorsements, and you will be hearing from me, some of the board members, for specific types of endorsements from our community organizations, as well as our possible future business partners in this effort. We want to show as much support from as many varied groups as we can. And one thing that we're hoping to be able to utilize is the idea of video endorsements, where we have little 30-second clips that can go out on social media, but can also be emailed for folks like me who aren't on social media, that have actual in-person endorsements for the bond. And those can come from what I think we're hoping to see is, grandparents, parents, and kids all together talking about why they support the bond. Our main message is going to be that this bond has to pass because the alternative, none of the alternatives are good. We've already discussed some of them. But the alternative is that we fail as a community to support our kids, and I don't think any of us wants to do that. I've seen this community show up in miraculous ways. During the ice storm, I put out a call for generators at 6 o'clock on a Thursday or something. I said, I need 10 generators to heat up Twilight Courts. And by golly, we got 10 generators all fired up. And then the power came on. But that's beside the point. Cool thing was this community stepped up when we asked. And I know they can do it again. We just have to get people to turn away from the fear-based mindset and look at what we can do together. And that is build a new school and build all of our schools into even better spaces than they already are. So that's the summary. If you have specific questions, I can certainly try to answer.
Are we doing mailers or no?
We certainly can. That would be a big undertaking, and they're awfully pricey. But I'll put that on our list, and we'll flesh it out and see what we are also working. With Jeremy Wright of Wright
Public
Affairs.
And he's going to be. We're meeting with him on Thursday to sort of pick his brain a little bit more on, what are the most effective strategies. If he tells us, hey, mailer's a really good way to go, then we could certainly price those out, adding that to our list.
And one more from me, Hillary, and thank you so much for doing this, because I absolutely love you. How did any feedback from Homer come from the booth, or because I was kind of circling around and I just didn't see a ton of people, but that wasn't uncommon for the vendors this last weekend for Homer Davenport. So I saw the flyers on the table for the bond, but I was just kind of curious.
That's a question for staff. The PAC didn't run the
okay.
staff.
Wasn't sure if there was any communication between the two.
We had it staffed all 3 days.
Presentations. Sorry, don't know if you heard that. Homer Davenport Days doesn't allow political organizations to table.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we decided to let Homer Days be Homer Days.
Okay.
But we are hoping to have a homecoming float, if we can pull that off.
Nice.
Nice.
I did hear from...
I had the idea of having some people riding donkeys and saying, like, don't be as stubborn as a mule, vote for the bond, or something like that.
That'll go over well.
Right? Something silly like that.
Josh, to answer your question, I heard from Kirsten Jorgensen on Friday night, and she said, there wasn't a lot of talk about bond per se. It was about answering questions, general questions, and that was the whole intent, is just to make sure that we had a presence, the school district had a presence there, and we had employees staffing it, so it wasn't quote-unquote political, so.
Yeah, and my advice for all of you is, talk to as many people as you can. If you meet somebody who says, well, I'm not for the bond, great, be curious. Ask them, well, tell me why. Tell me what your concerns are. Because very often the more people talk about them, they might talk themselves out of whatever fears or concerns they might have. And if they don't, you're there to answer that. And we are also working on just sort of a one-pager that has, pardon my dog in the background, that has answers to common questions that we can all sort of reference the same document, but also sort of an elevator speech of the major points so that we're all on the same page. The last thing we want to do is look like we're all scatterbrained all over the place. So we'll be, the three leads are, like I said, we're meeting with Jeremy Wright to sort of finalize some of our plans. And then once we have a really clear idea of what we want to do, we're hoping to schedule a meeting with the wider bond committee, supporters committee, of which you are all a part of. So we'll try to get as many people to probably a Zoom meeting. I think that's probably going to give us the best turnout. But I think Celeste is absolutely wonderful. She's so good at redirecting us back to, away from the what about me questions and back to the, well, what about us? We need to do this as a community. And I think that is the message that we just have to keep getting out there again and again and again. What serves the community serves each of us. So, and these are all of our kids.
Other questions?
Hillary, thanks for all you're doing on the committee. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Hillary.
your leadership, and I love all the thoughts via email. They're great to chew on. So thank you.
Yep.
Bet.
And your talking points with us were just spot on, and I'm so thankful and grateful for your dedication to this process.
You win the
Awesome.
award for best Zoom background, by the way.
I try, I really sculpted that. I just want people to know what they're dealing with.
I concur.
A creative mess.
Here comes a dog.
And a dog.
All right, well, thank you, Hillary,
Thanks, Hillary.
and
All right.
appreciate
Hillary.
you
Thank
hanging
you.
in with us.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, it's another opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody online?
Heard two people online.
Okay, if you would like to speak during public comment and are attending virtually, use the raise hand feature on Zoom. All right, we're gonna move on. So action items, we've got the board superintendent operating agreement. And this is just to adopt it for the 2023-2024 school year.
Move that we adopt the 2023-2024 Board Superintendent Operating Agreement.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the 2023-2024 Board Superintendent Working Agreement. This opens it up for another discussion. Doesn't look like we have discussion, so take the vote, Debbie.
Phil,
No.
Aaron,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
Josh,
Yep.
Jennifer,
Yes.
5-1.
All right, moving on to food service rates.
I move to approve the food service rates for 2023-24 school year.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the food service rates for the 2023 to 2024 school year. Any discussion?
Phil,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
all in favor.
All right, now we are on to the future agenda item requests. Is there anything that is burning for anybody?
I have one, looking into the possibility of non-voting student representation on our school board.
And anything else? All right. Well, without objection, meeting adjourned.